A pleasant good night, everyone. This is yours truly, Kingg Cyril Uruwei, Mabugane Hong Sungmut. Greetings to each and every one of you, home and abroad, here in Belize, here in the country of Belize, wherever you may be. Seeing bite. I was in Barranco yesterday. I want to shout out my Baranguna. We have some good folks over in Barranco who stay in tune, keep in touch with what's going on here in Dangriga, what we're talking about here on Dangriga Unmuted. Again, this is Dangriga Unmuted. We unmute the truth, we demand change. Tonight I have a very special guest. All my guests are special, Dr. Cass. Dr. Cass is in behind the scenes, he's in the waiting area, but this tonight is another special guest, Dr. Philip Castillo. Most of you might be familiar with the name, but I'm certain, like myself, most of you probably don't know of the brother's background. You don't know how he came about, why he's doing what he does in terms of polling. We're going to hear a lot more about him, his journey, what he's about, his studies. I could give you a summary of Dr. Philip Castillo, but I prefer he shares with you what he's about. You get it from the horse's mouth. We're live on YouTube as well. For those of you who prefer to be on YouTube and not on Facebook, send the link to your family, your friends that might not want to be on Facebook. Make it a family affair. Put it on your big screen TV. Transfer it to your smart TV and make it a family affair. Tonight is going to be informative. It's going to be educational. Before I bring you on, Dr. Cass, when I first approached Dr. Cass, I said to him, you know what, you're doing these polls. You recently did a poll here in Dangriga for the era representative, the mayor of Dangriga, and also the prime minister. And I hear whispers here and there as to credibility. So I decided, I say, you know what, make a chop it up with Dr. Cass a bit, ask him some questions, and just take a look at the polls and see how you actually came up with the figures, with the numbers. So without further ado, folks, family, friends, I want to introduce you to Dr. Philip Castillo. Dr. Cass, pleasant good night to you. You are live on Dangriga Unmuted on Obafo TV. Just say hi to our friends and then I will ask my first question.
Well, thanks for the invitation. I'm always honored to share information about Dangriga with persons from Dangriga. So I'm very grateful for the invitation, and let's see how it goes.
Very good. Now, Dr. Cass, first question on my list. Not much a question, but what I would like you to do is introduce yourself to the Belizean audience, to those in the diaspora, as to what you are, who you are, and why you are qualified to present these polls, and why should we take these polls serious.
I was born and raised in Dangriga. My first family home was in the Sawai area. That's about 60 or so years ago. So that gives you an idea of how old I am. We moved from Sawai to Lakeland. We spent over 12 years in Lakeland. And then we moved from Lakeland to the Isla Road area. And then we moved from Isla Road to the farm. That's where my family home is currently located. It's on the George Price Road, just opposite Quality Poultry area. That's where we've been living for the past 30 or so years. But focusing on my educational journey, it started at Sacred Heart Primary School. And then I went to Ecumenical High School. And Ecumenical was the highest level of education you could obtain in Dangriga at that time. So I completed Ecumenical and went to junior college at Belize City. That's the Belize Technical College. I finished from technical, got my first job in Belmopan, And it was from Belmopan that I went to study abroad. Just about all my post associate qualifications are abroad. My bachelor's degree, straight economics, my master's degree in development studies, and my doctoral degree also in development studies. As a part of my thesis for my doctoral degree focused on the South, my thesis was named In the Footsteps of the Orange. So what I did, I followed the orange. The orange has always been a major product of the South. I followed, oranges are used to produce concentrate. So I followed that production from Dangriga to the United States where we export our concentrate. And I found out what is done with the Belizean concentrate. And then along that, what I call that value chain, I wanted to find out all the revenues that are being generated and how much of that accrues to Dangriga and what Dangriga can do to generate more income from this value chain. And then I also looked at social factors, meaning that the changing nature of the workforce, the initial workforce behind the citrus industry were Garinago, and that shifted. So now migrant labor took over most aspects of the agricultural, well, at the lower levels of the agricultural chain in Dangriga. I started polling basically when I was a graduate student. I was a research assistant at the University of the West Indies. And as a research assistant, I worked with pollsters and I got interested in polling. And so when I returned to Belize, I became employed with the University of Belize. And for the past 6 or so years, I've been doing polling. And the proof of the pudding is in the eating, meaning that I do my polls in Dangriga, I publish the results, and so far the results have been bullseye. I would think 100% accurate. The only, well, I didn't do that poll, but the race between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump, I said that Kamala Harris would win. Obviously, I didn't do any poll. I was just following American polls. And the lesson that I learned was that if I personally didn't do a poll, I won't make any comment on that poll. But focusing on the polls that I have done, I've been close to 100% accurate, and that is my record.
Thank you for that, Dr. Cass. I want to also ask, now that you explained the accuracy, and many hailed you, many look at you as the authority when it comes to polling in Belize. Now, to the grassroots, to those of us who don't understand the nature of this work, and as to how accurate it is, because I watch the news, and I want to say, before I continue, one of the things I forgot to mention when I approached you, one thing you said to me off the bat, and I was very pleased with that. You said, well, anything to educate the masses, anything to get us out of ignorance. And that's what Obafo TV is about. That's what Dangriga Unmuted is about. I think the more we educate ourselves, we make wiser decisions. Now, with that said, your history, your background in doing this type of work, I want to play a video here. Hopefully you could hear this video on your end as well. Let me know. You should be able to, but if not, just give me a nudge so I could make some adjustments here. All right, here we go.
So I have full confidence that what Dr. Cass did, he tried his best.
I'm not hearing though.
With less, about a 1% of the constituency, which is tiny, to get it random from the voters list. Now, when you get a random sample and it's truly random, then you eliminate that aspect of it that you could be biased to one group or to the other. So I don't believe he went and interviewed 110 UDPs or 110 PUPs. I think it was being random. But in statistics, it is something that's always covered, that you could do a sample, and your sample, if it's even if it's random, could end up being skewed one way or the other. The only way you can overcome that is if you do like that 110 sample. If you do that, say 100 times, and then you take the average of that, then you can start to have confidence that your 110 size sample is reliable. But if you do one sample of 110, the chances that you are not representing the reality is very high. So I have full confidence that what Dr. 𝐶𝐁𝐻 did, he tried his best with a very...
Yeah.
What's your feedback on that? What's your take?
Well, my methodology hasn't changed, meaning that the methodology I use for this recent poll has not changed. And it was that methodology that produced all the accurate results in the past. So if you're doing something and it's working, there's absolutely no need to change it.
Very good. So for those of us, again, now take us through step by step. How does this happen? How do you come up with the numbers?
All right. Here are the numbers. Dangriga has just over 10,000 over 10,000 citizens. I think it's around 10,400. You're looking at the last census. That 10,400 would include everybody from 0 years old to the oldest person. Now, if you look at the voters list has 6,300 persons. So that tells you then that of the 10,000 citizens or of the 10,000 residents in Dangriga, 6,300 are on the voters list. So those who are not on the voters list would be less than 18 years old, or those who decide not to be registered, because it's by a process of registration that you get on the voters list. No, that voters list is a public document. It's available at the electoral office. I think it's on Pollock Street, thereabouts. So then, if I want a sample, let's say in this case, I wanted a sample of 110. I visited the voters list, and then I noticed that 85% are from Dangriga, about 12% are from Hope Creek Langbank, and then the remaining 3% are from Sarawee. So I picked my sample that way. Of my 110, I want 85% to be from Dangriga, and then 12% from Langbank, from Hope Creek Langbank, and the remaining 3% from Sarawee. But you could break down Dangriga even further, because most of the voters are in the south, the Holy Ghost polling area. And then the second largest area would be the Benguche polling area. So that's how I break down basically to get the numbers. Then now, so let's say I pick Cyril, I pick your name as somebody to be interviewed, and you live in the Holy Ghost area. Ideally, I have to find your house, because the voters list would list your address. But that's extremely expensive. And then that involves repeat visits if you're not at home. So then I would want to find out a popular place that you visit and voters like you visit. And the popular place that I come up with is the biggest Chinese shop in the area. So I would visit these Chinese shops, and then I pick a number, let's say 10. I interview every 10th person. That makes it random, because if I didn't do that, if a person came who I know looked decent and those kind of things, I may want to interview that person. If a person came who's shabbily dressed, I may want to avoid that person. But by sticking to a number, if I say number 10, every 10th person, it means that I interview that person, whoever he or she is. That makes the process random. That has worked since I've been doing polling, and basically that's what I continue to do. So once again, ideally, having selected you, the aim would be to go to your house and find you. That's extremely expensive. And so I generally avoid that. And then I find the places that you visit and persons like you would visit, and then I do my interview there. That's how I've been doing it. That's what I hope to continue.
You seem to have been accurate over the past couple of years, at least since you've been doing this. Now, who pays for this? Why do you do it, and who pays for it?
In the United States, polling is a big business. In Belize, in the United States, still in the United States, the political organizations have, or the political parties have pollsters as embedded in their campaigns. So pollsters would assist them in, you could poll test a word how it sounds. You could, on a regular basis, you could check the approval rating of the party leader or the area rep and things like that. So that's how, that level of sophistication, I hope that we get there soon. I generally fund my polls. And then the aim is that this is a business I hope to enter into on a full-time basis. And so right now, I generally fund my polls, but I'm hoping that it catches on. And then when it catches on, I'm hoping that the political parties take interest, because what they're getting from my polls is the straight truth. That you want to hear the truth. You need to hear the truth. I'm not certain then how you, the politician, adjust to it, but I would speak the numbers as they are. And then the politician take it, and then he decides whatever he wants to do with it. But as a pollster, I will continue to be a straight shooter. And then the numbers, well, numbers don't lie.
So to avoid any gray area, I want to ask the question directly. Have UDP or PUP or anybody of who might have interest in any political party offer any type of incentive or say to you, hey, I need you to do this poll? And if no, a twofold question, if no, would you be open to that?
I have gotten funding from Dr. Zabani in the past. My second poll, I think, the first poll I did, that was when Dr. Zabani was entering politics. And I did a poll, and then the poll showed that I think he had 60%. I said, I think he had 60%. The first person who approached for funding for polling was Papa Mena when he was area rep. That didn't work out, and so I funded the poll myself. The poll found that Dr. Zamani, his voting percentage would have been about 60%. So I published that.
You mean
Obviously,
support?
the percentage voting, the percentage who would vote for him would be about 60%. That was in 2020 thereabouts. So I published that. That was my first poll. Dr. Zabani saw the poll, and then he contacted me, and then later on he financed a subsequent poll that had him at the same 60%. When the elections actually came, he won with 61%.
Wow.
That's a bullseye result.
That's a bullseye result. That's impressive.
Then I did subsequent polling for the mayor. I think Mayor Mariano, he ran against Mr. Humphreys. I polled that also. When Earth ran against for her convention, I did several polls, but those are the ones that immediately come to mind. No, if you look at Earth's convention, I think I polled her at, I think it's something like 36%. She ended up winning, I think it's 42%. But if you look at Richard Webster, I think I polled him at 28 point something percent, and he got 29%. Again, you're looking at bullseye results.
That's really impressive, Dr. Cass. So those of you who just joined on, good night to all of you. I am live with Dr. Philip Castillo. He's an educator. He's a pollster. He is, I consider you an activist as well in your own way, Dr. Cass. And there are some questions that I want to ask you that might be somewhat outside of polling, but it affects how we are governed and how things are governed within the town as well. So, Mabugani and Hong Sumut, good night, greetings to each and every one of you, and welcome. We're talking about polling, the accuracy of Dr. Castillo's polls. How accurate is he? Is this just, does this just apply to anybody, right? Now, we might have, the reason I asked you the previous question is because oftentimes we live in a country. In Belize, we could get very political, and this is something that I myself am trying to avoid, even in the way I speak and the way I present things, because I always want to come with an unbiased approach. So some of us might say, okay, oh, he's doing this because, depending on the result, he's doing this because he's getting paid by this one, or he wants others to lose confidence in that one. You pretty much answered the question, but let's zoom into that a bit. Why you're funding this? This is coming out of your own pocket, not the PUP, not the
Yes.
UDP paying for it. Why do you do it apart from expecting it will become a business? Is there another reason, or that's just it? You're eventually going to do this for business, for profit, and that's where it ends.
Well, listen, you want to do it. I'm doing it for business. I want to be a pollster. I want to be a countrywide recognized pollster and generate income from it. That I'm very comfortable with numbers. Some persons are not. In school, people would say that they don't like maths or they don't like stats. I like maths. I like stats. I deal with numbers. And so I see this as a career post-retirement. I'm now newly retired. I see this as a career post-retirement, that in this country, there's a need for polling on a wide range of issues. And then in doing that, if I'm also educating people, then so much they are better. That yes, I've gotten funding, but my results speak for themselves. That in no way the funding has impacted the results. In fact, one of the characteristics of a pollster is that if the elections are to be held next month and the pollster makes a prediction, obviously if his prediction is wrong, then you could denigrate him and show any kind of scorn on him. But if the prediction is right and you thought he was wrong, then find a hole to put your head in. And that is how I'm going to do it, that I'm going to keep on calling the numbers as I see them. And yes, you would have critics, but the world is like that.
So, what do you say to those of us out there?
Yeah.
You stated your point. You get bullseye results time after time. For those who don't understand, for those who might insist and say there's some chance that this could be wrong, or there's some chance that maybe they're not satisfied with the polls. What, just in few words, talk to them.
Well, listen, I mean, you will always find doubters. That where a poll is concerned, a poll seeks to predict the future. So obviously there's something called a margin of error. You may not hit it bullseye, and there's a margin of error. No, there are always doubters and skeptics out there. That's the least of my concerns, meaning that I keep on doing what I'm doing, and what I'm doing, keep on getting the results that are accurate. And that's what I continue to do. I have absolutely nothing to tell those who are doubters, except whenever I do a poll, wait and see the results.
So somebody, I wouldn't be able to ask you at this point. We are a year in after PUP's victory. So I wouldn't be able to, you cannot predict from this point, let's say to general election, and say, this is how it likely going to work out. How soon or how close to general election would you be able to tell, like to give a bullseye prediction as to what the 2030 general election would be like?
What a poll does, a poll seeks to quantify uncertainty, meaning that the event has not yet occurred and you want to predict the likelihood of the event occurring. Now, between here and 2030, there'll be actual elections. The first such election is next year, 2027. Recall focusing on Mr. Mariano. Mariano first won in 2021 with about 50.7% of the votes. In 2024, his voting percentage increased from 50 to about 61.7%. Now, this poll is finding that he is losing support, that his support has reverted back to around 50%. That's a poll. Now, coming on to actual elections next year, that's an actual reality check. That will say how much his actual results are at that time. So as is now, a poll captures opinion at a point in time. The poll was done at the end of January, early February. So at that point in time, Mr. Mariano's support was around 49%. Now, there are things that Mr. Mariano can do to increase that support. And the other thing you must bear in mind is that Mr. Mariano's opponent at this time isn't known. So all that will impact on the final results. So as is now, it's very early, too early to see what will happen in the municipals next year, or certainly very, very early and premature to speak anything of the general in 2030.
Now, for you as an individual, let's shift away just a bit from polling and let's take a look at you as a resident, or you if you live here, you live in Dangriga, or you spend a lot of time in Dangriga.
Yeah, you could say that.
What do you see when you look around? What do you see in Dangriga? What are we lacking? What do you see and what do we need to bring this town to a point where we're living better, where the youths can flourish, where they can take advantage of opportunities?
You see a high level of political apathy, and that's reflected in the numbers. Dangriga has 6,000 something voters, just over 6,000 voters. The last election, the general elections, less than half of that, less than 3,000 went to the polls. So 50% of Dangrigans do not vote. Of that 3,000 or so that went to the polls, Dr. Zab got around 2,000 something, and you got around 700 and something. If you recall those numbers. But what does
Close
that
to
tell you?
700.
Yeah. That is telling you that there's a high level of political apathy in the town. So you want people to be involved, that you want people to know that every vote counts, that coming on to election, your vote, your voice matters. And as is now, we have a substantial segment of the population that sees no merit in voting, that does not want to vote, and they stay outside the system. The thing is, if you stay outside the system, then you must accept what the system gives you, that not voting is your choice. But the consequence of not voting is that you must accept what the majority or who the majority voted for, however small or minute the percentage that the winner got.
That's an important take, and which brings me to this topic. Now, imagine we increase voters. Currently, we have 6,300 electorates, people registered to vote. Dangriga is anywhere between, let's say, 10,000 people. We have results that say it's close to 15,000. Let's settle with 10,000 people. Elections have become a business. All right. And I see this, I witnessed this with my own eyes. And one thing I'll remember, I don't like call Mr. Ashcroft name much, but even Ashcroft, when he mentioned part of the corruption is the electorates, right? The voters. We're used to a certain way of voting where we get paid. So let's just say we increase the numbers. We get up to 8,000 people voting in Dangriga. It becomes more likely that most of those people will want to collect for their votes as well. How do you see us combating that to eradicate that type of thing and have fair elections in Belize?
The campaign finance reform. How you try to do it is that you publicize the names of the campaign donors. As is now, you mentioned Mr. Ashcroft, but there's no document that showed that Mr. Ashcroft gave X amount to any of the parties. That is simply because Belize has no campaign finance laws. Suppose we had campaign finance legislation that mandate that if you give over a certain amount, that has to be published, your name has to be published. Then at least we would know who are financing the political parties. That an election costs money, lots of money.
Yeah.
Running a campaign costs money, lots of money, and the persons themselves may not have the money, but they seek financing from outside sources who, if they win, would want their returns. Incumbency has multiple advantages, and one advantage that incumbency has is that you have access to resources of government, etc. And both parties have used that, and you anticipate that both parties will continue to use that.
For those listening at the moment, for those who have participated in this type of activity, getting paid for your votes, we talk about this briefly behind unofficially, Dr. Cass, the way how elections are run in Belize. I've had my experience. Now, let's say we have reform, right? We know who is paying for these campaigns. We know how much they're giving these political parties. I want to go back to the idea of getting paid for votes. We will still have a great number of people. We will still have some of the resources, the finance that will go toward people paying people for their votes. So even if we have record, right? We have reports of, oh, this one donated 100,000, this one donated X amount of dollars. I don't think that that will stop the electorates from expecting, right? I want to say this, and the reason why I'm hammering on this for this very first reason, in the 2025 elections, Dangriga was almost quiet. It was strange during a general election from morning, right, all the way up until, let's say, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock. Now, polls close at 6. It is around 4:30, close to 5. The tongue became so busy. And I witnessed it for myself. Everybody from all corners, you see a lot of blue shirt everywhere. It was something to behold. I'm glad I had the experience. So with the electorates, the people, the voters being as corrupt as the ones running for office, how do we combat that? Even by keeping track of who's giving the finance.
Well, you mentioned several assertions that may not be proven in truth, meaning that people accept payment or people demand payment for votes because people perceive politicians as a class, as corrupt, that their perception is that when you get in office, you will do things for yourself, you yourself and your family. so that on voting day, when you need my vote, well, I want my piece now, because this could be the only time I get my piece, because when you win, you will handle your piece for yourself and your family. So that perspective is out there. No, the fact that somebody accepts money from a politician doesn't mean that you'll vote for that politician, At the end of the day, during the voting process, when you are given a ballot and you go in a private space, nobody knows who you voted for. Absolutely nobody knows who you voted for. Which means then that if a politician gives you money, there's absolutely no guarantee that you'll vote for that person. In fact, it's quite possible that you could accept money from both parties. So you have
And
to look
people
at
do
that.
that.
And people do that. No, money has an influence in Belize's politics. We can't shy away from that. But I am wondering if it has something that economists would call diminishing returns. Because if you, Mr. X, have lost support in the town, or if you, Mr. X, for whatever reason, is no longer considered viable, I'm not certain if any amount of money can save you. That is where back to roots would be important. That at the end of the day, you knock on doors, you meet people face to face, and if you do that to the extent that you could do that well and genuinely, that is able to bring a level of support to you that money would not be able to change.
Absolutely. What would you say finally on voting, on corrupt elections? What would you say to those listening right now who might have engaged in this type of activity to cease from it, for us to make it become less or just eradicate it completely?
Well, actually, it's actually illegal. Belize's law based on existing Belizean legislation, paying somebody to vote for you is illegal, but it persists. And people justify it. As a pollster, I'm on the ground, I talk to people, and people justify it. What you want in Dangriga is a more informed and educated electorate, a more informed electorate, because an informed electorate would make substantially better decisions on election day. That yes, there's always the diehard PUPs, there are always the diehard UDPs, but my polls have found out that the overwhelming majority of Dangrigans are independent-minded voters. You want to appeal to that segment. You want to appeal to that cohort, because elections are won and lost by appealing to that cohort.
I'm glad you mentioned that, and thank you for that, Dr. Cass. Again, for those of you who just joined us, I want to thank you for tuning in to Obafo TV. This is Dangriga Unmuted. We unmute the truth, we demand change. Dr. Cass hammered on a very important point. With an educated voters, like you said, Dangriga, we have a lot of independent thinkers. That's a good thing. And we have a chance, at least here in Dangriga. I've seen the corruption. I've really witnessed it with my own eyes. But we have a chance here in Dangriga to really shift things around and to do things differently. Because each time election comes, we make decision. We don't make informed decisions, right? We go by the hype. We go by who our friends favor, or we go by who we might have gotten certain favor from, right? And so I say this to those of you listening. I hope that this is not just another live that you tune into because you want the scoops. We have to be active citizens. We have to make a difference and think about our youths, think about our children, think about the future of Dangriga. Finally, Dr. Cass, we talked about polling, we talked about the electorates, the voters, corrupt voting. I also want to ask, I never want to leave these developments off the table. We have two developments taking place here in Dangriga. We have one at the jetty area. We have another development in front of 𝐷𝐁𝐀𝐅𝐔𝐭𝐯. What do you know of these developments as a Dangriga resident or your roots being in Dangriga? What do you know of them? How do you feel about these developments?
Dangriga wants those and more of those. That Dangriga wants development. Dangriga as a town and the South as an area, as a geographic area, needs development. So when you're focusing on development, you have to focus on what economists call comparative advantage. What skill sets, what natural resources that you have that can be exploited sustainably to bring about development. So if you look at Dangriga, it is the only town on the mainland of this country that has a beach along its entire length. It's the only town that has a beach along its entire length. It has a deep water port or pier that I understand is one of the deepest in the country. So start from that. How can you exploit these resources? How can the town benefit from these resources? And that's what we're seeing, or that's what I'm hoping occurs, because Jetty started out, I think, banana first, I think, if you go way back, and then citrus. But exporting citrus from Jetty is no longer feasible. So you want to put Jetty to some other use that would make it feasible. And what seems to be happening is that if that will develop as a port for yachts and for persons, for small ships, not big as cruise ships, but for vessels to come and dock and spend a couple of days in the town, then that represents development, because that will bring about income, that will enhance income levels in the town. No, let's say no, a yacht, it's spelled YACHT or something like that, but it's pronounced YAK, yacht, something like that,
Yeah.
YAT. Yeah. Let's say a yacht comes with about maybe or two would come out, maybe let's say 15 persons each, and you're looking at 30 persons come in the town. These 30 persons who own the yacht or who own the yacht generally have an income level that is above average. That's why they own and could ride yachts and those kind of things. You want now for them to be entertained in the town so that money remains in the town. For example, they leave the yacht, they'll go to Russell Chiste auditorium, and maybe there's a performance there by maybe Holy Ghost has a dance group, and then the group could just come across and there's a performance there. That same group would go to maybe Penn Studio and spend some time there and buy a painting or two. That same group could go by Mr. I think he just passed away, the man who made drums and so.
Fino
Mr.
Austin Rodriguez.
Rodriguez, yes, passed by his area and buy some drums. That same group would go to Pelican and have a nice lunch. That same group would go to Gulisi and again be entertained. That represents money being left in the town on a sustainable basis. That brings about jobs. Now, the development in front of Secretariat School, if the aim is a tourism village, then now that represents opportunities for people to have their gift shops and selling items and those kind of things. The tourists may want local food that if he or she goes to Pelican, there's a menu you get at Pelican. But if a local person comes to sell you things like I don't know, Dangria people still make when I was growing up, they had snacks like kancham and katabrut and those kind of things, and porabon and things like that. That represents sales that an ordinary person can do. The tourism village would need security guards. The tourism village would need the salespersons then to keep the area clean and those kind of things. That represents income on a sustainable basis. That is what the town needs. So to the extent that those developments will promote, those developments you speak of, will promote that level of development in the town, I'm fully in support of them.
You know, Very, very great feedback, Dr. Cass. I appreciate your feedback. Friends and family, all of you tuned in online. Again, thank you all for joining. This is great. This is a great conversation. I bring up these topics because we have to understand what's happening in our town. We need to understand how these developments can or will affect us. And one of the reasons why I ask these questions or why I often bring them up is because, one, with a development like Jetty and what's happening in front of 𝐔𝐁𝐀𝐅𝐔𝐭𝐯, my question always is this: how do we, the people, the community, benefit from these developments? Yes, there will be booths out there. I met with the mayor not too long ago, about a month ago or less, and he assured me, he said the development in front of 𝐔𝐁𝐻 School and Church should be completed or will be completed by July. There will be a set number of booths out there where some of our Dangriga residents could occupy and go sell their items, right? There will be a hotel out there, a conference room. So with all these amenities, I keep asking, what can we do as Dangrigana, as a people of Dangriga, to participate, to make sure that we secure long term, right? We have resources, we have opportunities out there that can benefit us, that can go into the communities. We have the dance group, Marsha Dance Group. We have Auntie Martha, may she rest in peace. Most of these individuals, Johnny P, drummers, we have Data, we take over from Yao, Austin, Rodriguez. How can we be assured that we will benefit from these developments? What will happen when the tourists or when the yacht land and they're at Jetty? Where do they go? We want to make sure that we, the community, we, the people, will benefit firsthand. We don't always have to go through a third party or this individual before we get a piece of the pie. So those are the kind of questions I ask, why I bring up these topics in terms of development. If you guys have any questions, I might just take a look at some questions here or feedback in case you guys have any questions for Dr. Cass. Again, this is Dangriga Unmuted. We unmute the truth with demand change. I am with Dr. Philip Castillo. We talked about polling. We discussed Dr. Cass' recent polls on the era representative, our mayor here in Dangriga, and the prime minister. Let's see. Natasha, this man poll always accurate. Trust me, he even they do this poll over, he still get the same result. This man has spoke to senior people from Dangriga. His poll is telling the truth. Thank you, Natasha. Jason Guerrero, very impressed with Dr. Cass' scientific approach. Thank you, Mr. Guerrero. Sharon, very good discussion. Justice Derek Martinez, very informative. Justice for all Belizeans. The campaigners know the area, the voters, the area and voters personally, and based on the voter turnout, they can get an idea on how voters voted. Sharon Castillo, I agree with the public of Dangriga requiring education relating to politics. Who will do it? Or are politicians content with the citizens not knowing? That's a very, very important comment right there. Absolutely. This is one of the main reasons I come on every Wednesday and I try to connect with people that are qualified to speak on these topics, and also try to hold all of us responsible, accountable to do our part, be it that you're the area representative, you're the mayor, or even those of you out there who might have some type of influence within the community. Education is key. Education might be expensive, but they say, if you think education expensive, try ignorance. Ignorance a cost you.
Yeah.
Dr. Cass, I love you, my brother. I appreciate you. I'll give you the opportunity to speak your final words, inspire with people, And while you talk, I think I have one more question for you, but go ahead.
Again, I'm a product of the South, and I want to see the best in the South. I want to see the South achieve, attain, and strive for its potential. No, as is, our comparative advantage is in culture. We claim to be the culture capital. What we have to do now is monetize that to generate income from that. And to do that in a sustainable way, you have to focus on, I would say, tourism. That if the tourists come, that you have the various dance groups. These dance groups have colorful uniforms that are sewn locally. That generates income. These dance groups, the women of the town could cook local cultural food that could be sold. That's how money is generated and percolates to the lowest level of the town. That is what you want. Then we have entertainers. When I grew up, most of the older Garifuna entertainers, the singers, the drummers, etc. I could think of Junior Randa, I could think of Gabaga, I could think of Yo Hill, I could think of Lady Lord, I think, from Promised Land. I could think of these persons generally died extremely poor. They had a talent that that the tongue appreciated, but they died poor. This new set of Kuntarak artists, these guys are building upon the foundation that was laid, and these guys have a higher income level. What you want is to see more of that, more authentic music, and then you want to see the culture thrive and survive and generate money, because that is how it will generate money. When people are earning money from culture, then they are incentivized to keep the culture authentic. That's what you want. That's what Dangriga wants.
Absolutely. I brought you on primarily to discuss polling, to educate us, to help us to understand how you come up with these numbers. So because of that, I want to close out on that note with you. When do you expect to do another poll? And finally, when you do this poll, what should we know you can't give away results, but what should we, the voters, keep in mind? What are key things we should keep in mind when we receive these results?
The poll I just completed was an approval rating poll. That tells you it's a snapshot that X amount of voters approve of the mayor, his performance, and the area rep and the prime minister. Elections at the municipal level are next year, March. Sometime in March, elections will be held. If I get funding, I could do a poll around possibly the end of the year. A more complete poll, meaning that I sample around 100. I could do a larger poll, a larger sample, because when I sample around 100, what is called the margin of error is about 6 or 7%. If you follow American pollsters, their margin of error is usually plus or minus 3%. But to aim for a poll with plus or minus 3%, I'd have to increase the sample size. Increasing the sample size has a cost. So again, if there's anybody who wants to fund a poll, I'm ready, willing, and available. And all I'm saying is that you fund the poll, that the numbers that come out, those are the numbers that I go with. So if there's no takers and no funders, you're looking at a poll towards the end of the year. If I get funding, I might do one earlier.
Very good. Dr. Cass, Bandi Sereme, I know I will have you on again. I must bring you back. You know, we touched on so many things behind the scenes, and I think I want to bring some of those topics to the forefront in the near future. So once again, thank you very much for sharing with us, for sharing your wisdom, and to give us your feedback on all these questions that I've been asking. I'll see you again soon. I'll be in touch. Bandi Sereme.
All right, Sereme.
Folks, I'll take a break. I'll run this video and then I will be back to close up.
Tonight in Dangriga, a wave of voter dissatisfaction is hitting local and national leaders alike. Mayor Robert Mariano, ERA Representative Dr. Louis Zabani, and even Prime Minister John Briceño. A new survey by pollster and retired assistant professor Dr. Philip Castillo shows support for Dr. Zabani has plunged dramatically. Remember, he won big in 2020 with 61% of the vote, and his popularity soared even higher in 2025 when he secured 76.5%. But Dr. Castillo's latest polling tells a very different story, one that suggests confidence in these leaders is slipping fast.
He's underwater because I think he's at 41%, which means that more at 41%, 4 out of every 10 voters do not approve of the job that he's doing. Now, again, we did not ask them why, but some voters, some citizens did provide an opinion. And then the opinion would be that in terms of accessing the area rep, that there seem to be challenges in accessing him, basically, in meeting him and those and that specific issue.
A closer look at the numbers shows Dr. Zabani lost support in Dangriga Town and Saraway, but he's still strong in outlying villages like Hope Creek. Responding to the poll, Dr. Zabani says he welcomes Dr. Castillo's work, but argues that data collected closer to election time gives a truer read on how voters will actually decide.
First of all, the size of the poll is relatively small, but still helpful. So I'm not knocking it in that sense. I'm just saying that if you look at the last polls that he has done, you could go back and check them out. They have been consistently lower than the actual performance. So in my view, I don't believe that the numbers are that low. But even if they were, it is good to know so that you can take action.
One of the things that people were saying is that you're hard to access.
Yes, and that's the one that seems farthest from the truth. I am one of the very consistent area representatives that have office hours. So on Thursdays, like for example, tomorrow, I have my office. I am at the office. I have an office that is open from Monday to Friday. So persons can go, and they do go in. So besides the office hours on the Thursdays, I also visit on Saturdays, because we have Dangriga, Saraway, and Hope Creek.
Voters were also asked how they feel about the job Dangriga Mayor Mariano is doing. He first won the mayoral seat with 51% of the vote in 2021 and boosted his support to 63% in 2024. But today his approval shows a slight dip from where he started back in 2021.
He faces election next year, 2027. So what the poll found this year is that he's back around, I think it's 48.9% or just about 50%. So he's in that range. But then a poll has something called a margin of error, meaning that the 48% could be as high as 48 plus 6, because I think the margin of error was 6.8%, or 48 minus 6. And then again, if you look carefully at the numbers, 17% did not have an opinion. They said not sure or they're uncertain.
Voters also pointed to some persistent concerns in the municipality. They want better streets, improved garbage collection, and real action on unemployment, which many say remain a consistent challenge. When we reached out to Mayor Mariano for a response, he told us, quote, "I am appreciative of Dr. Philip Castillo, and although the next town council elections are a little over a year away, and notwithstanding a lot of change within that time, I am humbled by the favorable poll survey and results at this point in time. We are grateful for the public opinion and will do whatever we can to address their concerns." But the most striking number in this poll is the Prime Minister's approval rating in Dangriga. When voters were asked whether they approve of the job Prime Minister John Briceño is doing, just over half said they do not.
I think it's only 20%. That's 1 in every 5 voters approve of the job that the Prime Minister is doing as Prime Minister. A similar percentage are not sure, but a substantially larger percentage say that they do not approve of the job that he's doing at this point in time.
Is that, based on your observation, a decrease in his approval ratings in Dangriga?
No, I can't answer that question because, to the best of my knowledge, this is the first ever poll being done of the approval rating of the Prime Minister. So there is no comparable data.
For the Prime Minister, though, this poll may not move the needle. His political fate ultimately rests with voters in Orange Walk Central, the constituency that decides his future at the ballot box. Reporting for News 5, I am Paul Lopez.
Friends and family, welcome back to Dangriga Unmuted. This is �𝐈𝐕𝐄 TV, another episode of Dangriga Unmuted. I come on every Wednesday at 8 p.m. Wednesday night. Feel free to tune in. I'm also live on YouTube. Again, the purpose of this show is to educate, to inform, to challenge, to hold accountable those who are responsible to bring about positive change to this community, to this town. We unmute the truth, we demand change. So earlier I had a discussion with Dr. Philip Castillo. He made clarifications about polling. For those of you who are tuned in, I'd be interested in getting some feedback from you, how you feel about this discussion, how you feel moving forward as a voter. What can we do? What can I do to improve the content, to improve the experience? Make sure that you're not wasting your time when you're tuning into 𝐻𝐈𝐄 TV, Dangriga Unmuted. Now, briefly, the SpeedNet, the BTL acquisition of SpeedNet Smart is on pause. I like that. I like what the Deputy Prime Minister said, 𝐷𝐿. A lot of things happening, folks. Stay connected, stay informed, know what's happening in your country. To those of you preparing for municipal election, for those of you preparing for general election, educate the people, educate the masses, all right? Give them valuable information. Help them learn the importance of voting. For those of you who haven't registered to vote, on our vote. Dangriga has, or registered, Dangriga has over 6,300 electorates. 6,300 people were done register for vote. We need to up that. We have more than 10,000 people living in Dangriga. Encourage your friends, your daughter, your son, your family. Encourage them to go register to vote. So when it's time to make a decision, help make a decision. All right? Be a part of the decision making of your town. Don't make the decisions just being made without you, because money will get spent without you. You will continue to just get crumbs or nothing at all. Friends and family, to all of you tuned in online, thank you all for joining. Join me again every Wednesday at 8 p.m. right here on Facebook, 𝐻𝐈𝐄 TV, or YouTube on 𝐻𝐈𝐄 TV. This is yours truly, Kingg Cyril Uruwei. I'll see you again next week, Wednesday at 8 p.m. We have another informative show coming. So stay tuned, stay connected.
hard for us to worry about. If, for example, Uruwei is onto something, there is somebody, again, along with the corruption thing again, there is somebody who it is not convenient to follow that. So they're going to fight against you because they want to align themselves with somebody who they are benefiting from. So one of the things that we have to do as a people is to learn to be selfless in our efforts at achieving total goals for our people. We tend to be very individualistic.
Dollar for dollar, the best port, natural port in the country is right here at Commerce Bight, and something has to be done for the people of Dangriga to benefit more from that port.
We leave the doors to our communities wide open to exploitation, wide open to neglect, wide open to disrespect, expecting that somebody will come and do what needs to be done for us.
Commerce Bight, that's one of our biggest issues as far as economically in downtown. The problem is that those people in high offices in this country, they are not accountable to us. Everybody the hustle, guess who not the hustle? We. It's like a communist system where you keep the vast majority of people poor so they always want.